right, so good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome in from across the continent. It is so thrilling to welcome you back to another exciting program with us here at Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. Now, for those joining for the first time, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. Everything we do goes through our YouTube channel, so if you want to watch this program in 3 weeks or 3 years or catch one of 3,000 other programs that we've done on the go since 2015, you can do that right there. Lots of opportunity to learn about pretty much anything you could ever be interested in. Now, every single year, we bring on an Antarctic explorer named Dr. Hugh Griffiths. He's amazing. We love having Hugh on, one of the coolest scientists we ever have on. And when we finished up our program with him just a couple months ago, he's like, "Have you met Lily Simonson?" And I was like, "No, I haven't. We have to have her on." And so, lo and behold, here we are. Drum roll, please. I'm so excited to welcome you onto the broadcast for the first time, Lily. I'll bring you on stage as I say this intro. Hi, Lily. So Lily is an amazing artist, an adventurer, a woman with an inordinate fondness for hot dog soups, and an author of an amazing book and the Choose Your Own Adventure series, one of my favorite series growing up as a boy. She's just really awesome in a variety of ways. And so I'm so thrilled to have you on today to tell this unique story you have of like blending art and science and adventure and all sorts of great stuff. And welcome to the program.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk to all of you.
Now, I know you've got a lot to share. You've got this really cool image to kick us off with. So I'm going to bring this up. If you want to dive in and tell us about your adventures and what you're doing on this weird looking
Simonson, and I'm an artist who works with scientists. And this is a picture of me getting ready to scuba dive under the sea ice in Antarctica. We're being visited by a seal, a Weddell seal. So I'm going to explain how I live in California. I was never outdoorsy. I do not like being cold. I wear a down jacket in like 60-degree weather, maybe 68-degree weather. So how did I end up doing this? So it is a long story, but I'm gonna get into it with you all, and we'll have time to ask lots of questions when I'm done. So when I was starting out as a painter, I had a series of paintings of lobsters and a series of paintings of moths. And they were these two sort of subjects that I spent many years making paintings of, and that's sort of the subject of its own talk. But anyway, I'm going to explain how I started working with scientists. So what happened was I had been making these two paintings of these sort of weird creatures, thinking that they weren't related at all. And then one day, I guess it was in 2006, so quite a while ago now, they announced the discovery of a new creature, and it was described called the Yeti crab. And it was described in the New York Times as a lobster with the fur of a moth, because moths have like setae on them. It's sort of like fur, not exactly. So this Yeti crab was like, it felt like it was meant to be, that I just had to start painting the Yeti crab. So I like to work from observation, from life. So when I was painting these other creatures, I would go out and catch a moth, keep it alive in my studio, and use it as a model for my paintings. So I had to see this Yeti crab in person. The problem is it lives thousands and thousands and thousands of feet and thousands of meters below the surface of the ocean in a deep, deep sea. And there was only one specimen in the world. So I went all the way to France to see the specimen that they had collected with the submarine. And the reason I have this little censored bar over its face was it had just been discovered and they didn't want me to share pictures of it. So I made a little joke where I blocked out its face. So I started painting this creature called the Yeti crab, which has it's all white, and it's got long pincers that are covered in this setae, this fur. And so it's very cute and fluffy. And what light around hydrothermal vents. This is a close-up of the Yeti crab. So it lives around hydrothermal vents and around methane seeps. And I started thinking about how painting a newly discovered creature like the Yeti crab was sort of like this. It made me think about this history of science and art working together. So I was painting new discoveries from science as an artist. And I started thinking about this amazing history of artists like Audubon and this artist, Maria Marion, who during the time where this sort of Americas were being explored, they by Europeans, they used paintings as a way to share the discoveries. Now we have photography, which does the trick pretty well. So as a painter, I get to paint not just what it looks like, but sort of the feeling and the atmosphere and the excitement and the motion of it. So I get to paint these new discoveries and bring this other sort of broader perspective to it. So I made a bunch of paintings of the Yeti crab, and at a certain point, another species got discovered by some scientists at Scripps in San Diego, which is in California, which was much closer to me. So I started visiting this lab at Scripps and borrowing that Yeti crab specimen and using that as a model for my paintings. And at a certain point, the scientists who were studying it said, you know what, Lily, there are other creatures in the deep sea besides the Yeti crab that are also pretty cool. So I started painting other deep sea stuff. This is a painting of an isopod, a giant isopod. They're like, if you've ever seen like a roly-poly bug, they look like those, but they're this big. They're like huge, like a foot and a half. And then these are spider crabs. And then in the background, we've got this jellyfish that is biologically immortal. So they have their baby polyp stage, and then they mature and they reproduce. But then instead of dying at the end of their life cycle, they start it again and revert to the polyp stage and go through it all again. So I had originally come to the Yeti crab from this very personal place of like, oh, this is a really mysterious, interesting creature with this very unusual like fluffiness, and I was kind of using it as a metaphor for human ideas. But the more I started working with scientists and learning about the creatures that I was painting and their interesting biology, the more the science itself became part of my artwork. After many years of working with these scientists at Scripps, I started getting invited to go on ships on oceanographic expeditions. So I've been on a lot of really exciting expeditions, but one of the most exciting ones was visiting hydrothermal vents, which are, if you're not familiar, they're like deep sea volcanoes, except instead of gas erupting, you get this it looks like smoke or gas, but it's actually very mineral rich, super hot water, like steam almost, that's coming up from under the seafloor. And it's full of methane and sulfur and all kinds of chemicals from under the Earth's crust that are erupting out. And so we used to think that there was nothing alive in the deep sea because, as you know, most plants require light, right? They have photosynthesis, they turn sunlight into energy, and then animals eat plants. And that's sort of the basis of the food chain we've always known about. And so we used to think, well, there's no light, so there's no plants, so nothing can live there. But it turns out that there are bacteria and all kinds of microbes, archaean bacteria, that actually consume methane and sulfur that comes out of these hydrothermal vents and seeps. And then there are animals like the Yeti crab and like tube worms that actually eat the methane and sulfur and turn it into energy. So I've made a bunch of paintings of these hydrothermal vents, and then the first creatures that we discovered living at them are tube worms, giant tube worms. They get up to like 2 meters or 6 feet long, and they have these beautiful red plumes. So I got to go and help collect tube worms from these hydrothermal vents, and then paint the tube worms. So I sort of, while I'm on the ship, I make these smaller paintings that are studies that turn into bigger paintings. And then this is just a goofy video that the scientists I was sailing with decided to make about my process, sort of poking fun at the way I always paint from life. So I would have the tube worm in my studio as a model, and then I'd be looking at it all the time, sort of the way traditional painters might use a human model. So here's, oops, the video doesn't want to play. There it is.
So I can see, yeah, and stretch out of the tube. Beautiful. Yes, I want to see a little bit more blue. Yeah, just fluff up right there. Magnificent. That is perfect. And yeah, just twist a little so I can see more light coming through the tube. Excellent. Beautiful, beautiful. Don't move a muscle.
Lily, you're a riot.
Wonderful. Yeah. Just hold that. Oh, Lily. Don't move a muscle. Beautiful.
So anyway, so this is a painting that I made on the ship. It's about 3 feet by 4 feet, or 1 meter by a little more than 1 meter. And then I would use those paintings from the ship as studies for really big paintings. So this other painting is 5 feet by 7 feet. And I like to, well, another thing about my process is I use fluorescent paints. So I do the whole painting with normal paint, and then I redo it with fluorescent paint that glows in the black light. And part of the idea is to sort of transform the exhibition space into sort of an underwater space, but also to create this luminosity. I love the way sort of old master paintings have this glowing effect, and this is like a fun way for me to really emphasize that glow, especially that things underwater have. And then I also had the exciting opportunity to dive in this research vessel, Alvin. So I would have dove in this submarine anywhere in the world, but I happened to get a chance to dive in the sub to see the Yeti crab, which was really cool. It was like full circle because my interest in the deep sea started with the Yeti crab, and then I started painting all these other things, and then I got to go back to the Yeti. And of course, as Jessie mentioned, I do a lot of things in a hot dog costume. It's just sort of a running joke that I can't let go of. So of course I had to wear my hot dog costume in the sub. I didn't actually get to go all the way down in the hot dog because it's too flammable. And the sub is oxygen rich. But I did get to wear it in the sub, and then I had to take it off once the dive started. But anyway, you'll see it. The hot dog comes up a few more times. So this is me drawing Yetis in the sub, and similar to, well, so for my process with the sub is that I couldn't bring my paints, but I got to bring my sketchbook and actually draw the Yeti crab from the sub, and then use that as a study for paintings. And the most remarkable thing about these Yeti crabs is this particular species dances all the time. So they wave their pinchers up over their bodies continuously. And so you look around from the sub, and I thought we'd see a handful of these fuzzy white Yeti crabs, but actually there are dozens and dozens and dozens of them. It's like everywhere you look, you see these fluffy white pinchers waving at you. And the theory is that they're stirring up the sulfur and methane because the furry stuff on their pinchers, the seedy, is actually bacteria. They've got seedy, and then they've got filamentous stringy bacteria growing on the seedy. And so that bacteria consumes the sulfur, and then the Yeti crabs eat the bacteria. So they're like little farmers. They've got these little farms growing on their pinchers, and they wave their pinchers around. That the thought is they may be stirring up the sulfur to feed the bacteria, or maybe they're just dancing. And when we were on our dive, we decided that a group of Yetis would be called a party of Yetis. But I came up with that. And now it is part of official scientific nomenclature that a group of Yeti crabs is a party of Yetis. And on that same expedition, we got to see a lot of other cool stuff. I still love worms. This is another type of tube worm, Lamellobrachia. They're They can be even longer than the riftia, the other kind of tube worm I showed you before, but they're skinnier. And then this is a scale worm. They're these beautiful iridescent creatures. And then one of the most surprising things about diving in the sub was a huge number of creatures in the ocean make their own light. So they're bioluminescent. And I had been familiar with bioluminescence that's at the surface of the water, which kind of looks like little bits of glitter, little specks that glow, green specks. But when you're diving in the sub, it's like the sunlight disappears at a certain depth, and then it's pitch black for a long time, but you get tons of bioluminescent creatures swimming by the porthole of the sub. And it's almost like everywhere you look, there's some glowing creature zooming by, and it's not just little specks. You see the whole organism lit up, and there's a whole range of colors, like bright neon green to aqua to turquoise to blue. It was just incredible. I'm going to scoot through these slides a little more quickly. This is another expedition. These microbes form these biomorphic shapes on the seafloor. So they leave behind this byproduct called carbonate, which is like a rock. And in this site, the carbonate makes these three-dimensional forms that almost look like little sculptures. So you've probably been wondering this whole time how I'm going to get to Antarctica. So what happened was the scientist that discovered that second dancing species of Yeti crab, he said, his name's Andrew Thurber, and he said, well, two things happened. I met Hugh Griffiths, who Jesse mentioned, who's an Antarctic scientist and explorer, and he started showing me really cool specimens from Antarctica. And I was like Hugh, I was excited by what I saw, but not totally convinced I really wanted to go to Antarctica. And then Andrew came along and said, I discovered the Yeti crab in Costa Rica, but my main research is in Antarctica. And Andrew showed me images of himself scuba diving under the sea ice. And as you can see, so the sea ice is white on top, but as you can see from this photo, it's these beautiful colors underneath and these crazy formations. So once I saw Andrew's images, and after spending several years talking to Hugh about the Antarctic, I was sold. And they both told me about this program for artists and writers where, along with all the researchers that the government sends to Antarctica, there's all these countries have research stations in Antarctica. Along with all the researchers, they choose an artist or writer to go. So I applied for this artist residency and I got to go, and I learned to scuba dive so I could scuba dive under the sea ice. So we've got the largest expanse of sea ice on the planet is here off the US Research Station. They use a big drill to drill through the 6 feet of sea ice, and then you dive down through a hole in the sea ice. And I'm going to scoot through this video quickly. So this is me diving through the hole. And you come out and you see all these amazing colors and textures. It looks like a feather boa everywhere. These ice crystals are just beautiful. And there's microalgae that grows in the sea ice that makes it glow like neon green and turquoise and gold. And then we've got these amazing brine channels, these like giant icicle type things that hang down. And the water is more clear than anywhere else on the planet. You can see up to 1,000 feet. So that's 10 times further than almost anywhere else. And it feels like you're not even in water. It feels like you're flying through the air. It's just amazing. And so here I am. Oops. Got to show the hot dog costume. So, of course, my first question when I got there was, can I wear my hot dog costume during the dive? And they said, no problem. So, as far as I know, I am the first and only person to ever scuba dive in Antarctica in a hot dog costume. So, it's good to be, the first at something, especially if you're into exploration. And so you climb out through the hole at the end of the dive. So I did a bunch of paintings of the organisms that live in the sea, which are being impacted by climate change. And so there, a lot of scientists are studying the impact of warming temperatures and more carbon dioxide in the water. And one creature that's really affected are these little snails called pteropods. And this is another species of pteropod. This painting, I like to paint huge. So this painting is 16 feet long, six feet tall, so 2 meters tall, and then 16 feet long, almost 3 meters. No, almost 4 meters. Math is not my strong suit. We'll get to that later. This is a painting of these nudibranchs. And then I also just fell in love with the landscape there. The sea ice makes just amazing formations. This is a submerged glacier. And so I made a lot of paintings based on the sea ice itself and what it feels like to dive under the ice. And then I always invite the scientists that I've been working with to come to the gallery when I have an exhibition and speak about their work so that I get a chance to convey more than just what it looks like, but the scientific relevance of what I'm painting. And then last year, I had a novel published that's part of a series of game books called Choose Your Own Adventure, where every few pages, you, the reader, get to make a decision about what you want to do next. So depending on your decision, it might be come to Lily's talk, turn to page 12, or stay at home from school today, turn to page 6, and then a different story emerges based on what you choose. So this is a story inspired by the research around these methane seeps. There's a brand new methane seep in Antarctica. And so that was sort of the inspiration. The star is these microbes. And I'm still painting that seep, and I'll be going back to Antarctica next fall to look more at that seep. So like there are these hydrothermal vents where the methane and sulfur come out, and then there are also these seeps where they kind of seep out slowly instead of bursting out in this volcanic way. So this is a painting of a seep, and the white stuff on the bottom of the painting is the little bacteria that form these. The bacteria are microscopic, but they come together to form these mats that you can actually see with your eye. They're these fluffy little mats on the seafloor that create these beautiful patterns. So that concludes my slides, and now we get to have questions.
Fantastic. Well, Lily, that was a wild ride. Thank you for packing so much into a pretty short talk. That was fantastic, and a nice setup with the art behind you too. I'm glad you took the time to switch that at the very beginning. We have so many questions already on YouTube, which is amazing. And needless to say, a lot of them are about our Yeti crabs. You set yourself up for that one. But we're going to dive in with Q&A. Isabel Selim, St. Michael's School, I'm coming to you guys live. YouTubers, don't be shy. Please do share as many as possible. We've got like 15 minutes together, so loads of time for Q&A. I'm going to start with a question for you, which is, how long does it take to make a painting? Is there a set amount of time? I mean, they're very big, so it's a long time to sort of get everything together, but is there a tried and true amount of time?
No, it actually varies a lot. Like when I am at sea on an expedition, I work much more quickly because, first of all, it's easier because I have the live specimen in front of me, which has its full color and movement. So that's the most straightforward. Plus, I am kind of under observation. So I'm usually in the lab with the other scientists. I've got my work set up in the lab, and everybody is working around the clock on these expeditions. So I tend to work really hard. So that'll be 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe. And those paintings tend to be smaller. A bigger painting, if I know exactly what I want it to look like and everything goes according to plan, that can be like 3 weeks maybe, but sometimes I'll spend 6 months on a painting. So it really depends on if the painting is cooperating with my vision or not.
Very cool. Thank you for that, Lily.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got many questions on sea animals from our YouTube friends, and then we're going to go to Blairmore, Alberta for our question right after that. But Briar wants to know, and he's in Miss Wilson's class, joining us in Hamilton. They want to know, what do these creatures feel like? Like, is there a texture? Is there anything you can share with us?
Oh, well, they are all different. So, that is such a good question. So the Yeti crabs are very, they've got these hard exoskeletons. So they're pretty like a lobster or something. They're pretty stiff. The tube worms have these calcified tubes that they're in, so that's more like a Yeti crab shell or something. But then the tube worm itself is very sort of floppy. I expected the tube worms to be a little more fuzzy because they've got these plumes, but I don't know what they're like when they're really in the water. But once they've been sort of harvested and we're looking at the specimens, they're more like they're not so feathery. They're more like skin or something.
Yeah. I love this answer. And I mean, the essence is that it's diverse. It's different depending on what animals you have. But I'm really glad you harped on the fact that it's different, sort of thinking about them in their natural habitat versus when you've taken them out. And the blobfish is a great example of this. So we talk about this in every deep sea broadcast. Everybody's seen the blobfish at this point. It got really famous. And everyone's like, what a silly looking fish. Well, in the water where it lives, it looks like a fish. It's just because it comes up that it ends up with this weird texture because the adaptations that you need to survive so far down are radically different from what we have on the surface. So I love this answer. And thanks, Briar, for the great question. Miss McKee's class, Blair Moore, we're going to head to you guys. Come on in and take us away. Hi, guys.
I smile. I think my brother has one of your, books.
Oh, cool.
Cool.
I think the title is, Your Grandparents Are Spies or something like that.
Oh,
Nice.
one of the Choose Your Own Adventure books.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have actually, it's kind of cool because it's a series that has been around for 30 plus years. So a lot of different authors have contributed to the series. So I didn't write that one, but it's part of the same series that my Antarctica book is.
Yeah, I have 12 books in that series, but I need to get the Antarctica one because now that I know that you're involved, it's first thing. I'm ordering it today. Do you have any questions for Lily in our Blair Moore class? Anything you want to ask?
Go ahead, Griffin.
So if you were a mad scientist and you could create any animal and you could mix DNA, what would it be?
Oh my
Best
gosh.
question ever. Thank you for that, my dear.
Wow. That's such a cool question. Well, I just want to say that one of my favorite things about painting these creatures is that they look so fantastical and so invented. And a lot of people who see my paintings think that I have made up the subject. And I love revealing that it's actually real. If I could, I have to be honest with you. I almost feel like I did create the Yeti crab. It is my perfect animal because I love crustaceans so much. I just love how sort of they look like segmented robots almost, or aliens, but there's also something human about the way they have these long pinchers and these prominent. Well, Yeti crabs don't have eyes, but they have these sort of noses. There's something human-ish about them. And then the way they have this magic way of turning methane and sulfur into energy, I feel like they are already my dream animal and they're already real. And I hope that's not too unsatisfying, but it just, and then the way it happened, they have this mythical name, the Yeti, which I don't know if you've heard of the Yeti, but it's also called Bigfoot or Sasquatch. And it's this mythical creature that some people think is real that lives in the mountains and it's white and covered with fur. And so the Yeti crab seems almost too wild to be true. So I feel like the Yeti crab is my dream.
An amazing answer. So I whenever I bring on anyone in the arts world, and we've only done probably 10, 15 programs with someone even remotely as cool as you ever. I always hope that we get a question that blends sort of science and art. I've done 1,500 programs. We've never had that question. So thank you very much.
That was a cool question.
Yeah. We're going to head to Miss Dearson's class, St. Michael's School. If you want to unmute your mic, we'll come and check in with you guys, and then we'll take some from our YouTube friends. We've got tons of time left in Q&A, so keep those questions coming. Think about some other ones, and we'll go to our St. Michael's crew to kick us off.
Okay. When you were in the water, what temperature was it?
Oh, that's a great question. So the temperature is actually 2 degrees below freezing in Antarctica in the ocean. So it's 28 degrees Fahrenheit or -2 Celsius. And so how can that be, right? That it's below freezing, but it's water. And does anybody have a guess of why that is? How water can it be below freezing?
Ooh, I'm going to look for hands up. Does anyone have any guesses in our classes? You can think about this. This is a tricky one. I will say that
really tricky.
High schoolers have a hard time with this one. I don't see any hands yet, Lily, so if you want to share with us.
It's because the ocean is salty, and salt water freezes at a lower temperature than fresh water or water from your tap. So if you mix salt into water and try to freeze it, you're going to need to turn your freezer down to make it freeze. So the water is really, really cold. And something that's kind of cool is that it's actually cold enough to freeze blood. So because blood doesn't have salt in it, right? So it's 28 degrees or -2 Celsius. And so the fish, which have blood in their bodies, have actually evolved antifreeze, like a special enzyme to keep their blood from freezing in that cold temperature. So I hate being cold. I was really nervous. I kept emailing the dive supervisor, like, before I went, can I get a heated dry suit? He kept saying, no, you don't need it. And so, yeah, and what you do is you wear a dry suit. So it's almost like an astronaut suit. So your body is covered up, your face is exposed, but your body is all sealed up. It still feels like being outside on a really cold day because water conducts heat away from your body so quickly. So it feels even colder than 28 degrees. So it feels cold. Your face is exposed and your face goes numb right away. But the environment was so beautiful that the cold didn't bother me at all. I was just so excited. And it was such a spectacular environment that I almost didn't notice how cold it was.
You might say it was so beautiful that the cold never bothered you anyway. Sorry, I just only opportunity.
As I was saying it, I was like, well, this sounds familiar.
Yeah. We're going to sneak in a few from our online friends, and then we're going to come back to our live classes. Okay, I'm going to do a rapid fire round of some Yeti crab biology because we got a whole bunch on those, so I want to do those, and then I'll take a hard question. So Mara wants to know, how fluffy is the Yeti crab?
They are so fluffy, so much fluffier seeing them in real life than you would see on a video or a photo. So that I've been painting them for 10 years. I thought I was exaggerating how fluffy they were, but in person, they're even fluffier than I imagined because they've got their setae, their little hairs, and then on the hairs is all this filamentous stringy bacteria. So they are so fluffy, like fluffier than a dandelion.
What? Sorry, I was all prepared to ask like a serious next question, and then the dandelion analogy threw me off. Thank you for that. Starla wants to know what they eat, which is a great follow-up to the fluffy question.
Okay, so they eat the bacteria that's on their pinchers. So all the fluffiness is what they eat. So the bacteria, the stringy filamentous white bacteria, eats sulfur, and it grows on the setae on their pinchers, and then the Yeti crabs eat the bacteria.
Imagine, you've all seen farms, hopefully, in your lives. Some of you live in very close to farming communities, and certainly Southern Ontario, a lot of farms, which is great. Alberta, a lot of farms. So if you've seen a farm, imagine where your arms grow plants on them, and you just go, and you eat them off. That's what the Yeti crabs do. It's really weird. It's a really freaky thing. It's the closest thing I can get to a human analogy, but very, very neat. All right. We'll take another Yeti crab one in a minute, but I want to ask one art question, then we're going to go back to Blairmore for a second question in Alberta. several of the students want to know, did you always like art? The class is in grade 3. Did you like it in grade 3? Were you good at it? Anything you can share with us?
I did. I always loved art and I spent a lot of time drawing. One thing that's kind of interesting is I was scared of science and always intimidated by science, and I thought I wasn't good at science. So I never would have expected, if you had told me when I was a kid that I would spend my career working with like some of the world's most prominent scientists, I would have not believed you, because I would have thought, well, I would never understand what they're saying. I'm just not good at that. So that's been something that's really exciting, is I always segmented myself and thought, oh, I'm an art person, but your brain is amazing and everyone's brain is amazing. And I think if you are learning about something that is exciting to you, it doesn't matter what the subject is. Your brain can understand it. So that's the key.
What a beautiful answer. Thanks, Lily. All right, we're going to head back to Blair Moore, Miss McKee's class. Come on back in, unmute your mic, and you are good to go. Hi, guys.
What is your favorite painting that you did?
Nice question.
Oh,
Good question.
I would say the painting that I'm most proud of is a painting that I made of tube worms. So let me see if I can pull that up. Am I still sharing my screen?
You are still sharing, yeah. If you bring it up, I can pop it up really quick. So take your time and we'll show it.
So, where did it go? Here it is.
All right, and I'll pop it up. There we are. The tube worm painting for everybody. How neat.
Yeah. So this is this painting shows the tube worms themselves, and then in the foreground, you can see this little green and black stuff. This is the trophosome. So that's what's inside their bodies that magically turns sulfur into energy for them. And I like this painting because the tube worms are even bigger than in real life, and I feel like to get a sense of the scale, here's me next to the painting. You get really overtaken by the tube worms. And I like the dimensionality, and I feel like you really get a sense of what they look like and what they feel like and how special they are, because they're sort of iconic. They were the first deep sea organism to be discovered. So even though the Yeti crab is my favorite animal, these hold a special place in the history of deep sea exploration.
They do. I'm a huge Yeti crab fan. Don't get me wrong, but tube worms always hold a special place to me because they were the first. Like when we went down, we had no idea that ecosystems like that existed at all down there. This all happened fairly recently. I know, like the 60s, 70s, 80s seemed like an eternity ago to you kids, but that's actually really recently in scientific history. And it's amazing that we discovered a whole new realm of the world that recently. It's astonishing. And every time we go to the deep sea, we find new things. It's really quite a magical spot.
Yes. And tube worms are so unusual looking. There's like nothing else like them.
Yeah. They look like they're like many things in the deep sea. If we didn't have them on Earth, you'd think they were an alien sci-fi creation.
Exactly. Yeah.
St. Michael's School, I'm going to head back to you. You guys have been so patient. And then we're pretty much ready to be done. Unfortunately, time flies and you're having fun in these broadcasts, kids. But come on back in. Mr. Simmons.
How did you get started painting?
Ooh.
Oh, that's a great question. So when I was growing up, I always made drawings. And back to the other question, I wouldn't say that I was always good at it. I always enjoyed drawing. But painting, found very frustrating when I was younger. And so I always stuck to drawing. And then when I started college, I thought that I wanted to be a lawyer, like an environmental lawyer or a civil rights lawyer. And but then I had a friend who said, you have to take this painting class. And I was like, no, I'm too scared of painting. I can't do it. But they said the teacher was just amazing and that I would really like her. So it was just really one class in college. And as soon as I started that class, it's really changed my life, because that teacher was really special, because in each person, our beginning paintings, none of them were very good, but she saw something interesting about each and every one of them. And I realized that painting was this really special way of making art, where you get to literally like sort of leave your mark. And each painting is so personal and individual. And I just, I fell in love with the material and the texture and the light that can come through and all the things you can do with it.
Yeah, what a beautiful answer, Lily. Thank you so, so much. And I love whenever we get this question from our students, but I really love your answer more than anything we've probably ever had. Don't tell the other speakers. Lily, we're going to bring in our class to say a big thank you and farewell in a minute. But before we go, I know we could go all day. I'm going to highlight again, if people want to check out your sites and the amazing work that you've done, your website's very easy to find for anybody. So I'll share that with all our teachers when we're done in a minute. But is there a final message you want to share with our kids about your work, anything that they can take home with them today?
Yeah, I would just go back to the idea that, like, as long as you feel excited about what you're learning about, it's always fun and easy. So yeah, just notice what makes you happy and excited and follow that path.
Amazing. Lily, it's been such a pleasure. Stick around for me at the end, but I'm going to bring in our Isabel Stellan and our St. Michael's School crews. You want to unmute your microphones, Ms. McKee, Ms. Searson's class, YouTubers, Ms. Wilson, you can yell at home, but I'll bring you into the broadcast. Thank you so much, classes, for your great questions and enthusiasm. Have a wonderful day, everyone, and bye for now.